So the other day I made a video about these homeschoolers who were abused, and a lot of you commented, well, Zach, there was nothing in the articles about them being homeschooled. However, and this is maybe something I failed to mention in the video, there have been a ton of articles released by the mainstream media using this example because they were homeschooled or are homeschooled, and using that as an excuse on why we need increased regulation or to get rid of homeschooling completely in this country. The mainstream media is wasting no opportunity. It's just like the gun issues. Whenever there's a tragic incident of somebody who has low moral character or no moral compass at all, they use that as an example of why we need to get rid of the guns. It's going to be the same with homeschooling. It is the same with homeschooling. Here's a whole bunch of articles. If you just performed a simple search of Michigan homeschool abuse, you would see a whole bunch of articles, including articles released by the Washington Post, the Democratic Underground, and a whole bunch of other mainstream news media outlets talking about this case and why we need increased regulation. Let's jump over here quick first to the Detroit Free Press. It says, debate heats up around changing Michigan's homeschooling laws. So I had a number of you email me who are in Michigan and say, well, Zach, they're not going to increase. We have great regulations here now, but they're trying to change that. They're not going to waste this opportunity, even though this opportunity is completely frivolous and they've tried to prosecute it before and couldn't. They're going to continue to do this and use any opportunity to increase regulation or to get rid of it completely. So here's one. It says, debate heats up around changing Michigan's homeschooling laws. It says, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel and Democratic state lawmakers are calling for more state oversight into homeschooling following the recent reports of child abuse, where officials say homeschooling helped conceal mistreatment by caregivers. But let's move over to this article from the Washington Post, because here we're definitely in the national mainstream media. In Michigan, a new push for greater homeschooling rules and oversight. The effort comes days after a horrifying Washington Post story about the torture and murder of a homeschooled boy from Michigan. Now, this story is different from the one that I talked about in the video the other day. Elected officials in Michigan are calling for increased oversight of homeschooling, setting the stage for a potentially bitter legislative battle that could be a bellwether for other efforts to regulate America's soaring number of home educators. The push to establish new rules for homeschoolers in a state where they face essentially no regulation, not true, comes days after the Washington Post published an examination of the torture and murder of a homeschooled 11-year-old from Michigan. On Monday, State Attorney General Dana Nessel, Democrat, also announced charges against foster parents who she said hid the abuse of their children, claiming to homeschool. Now, that was what I talked about in the video the other day. Michigan officials reviewed discussion of homeschooling regulation first reported by the Detroit Free Press comes amid an explosion of popularity for a method of instruction once confined to the ideological fringe. Yeah, all those crazy right-wing wackos. Since 2017, homeschooling has been America's fastest growing form of education, according to a Post analysis. We talked about that in another video. There may now be as many as 2.7 million homeschool kids in the United States, compared to only 1.5 million before the, scam. Yet in most of the country, home educators are not required to demonstrate that their children are meeting statewide academic standards. And in 11 states, including Michigan, they don't even have to notify anyone that their kids are being homeschooled. Now, the reality is, when they do enact standards like testing standards, they quickly pull them away, because when you publish the test scores of the homeschoolers and compare those to the public school kids, they are like, it's like this. It's completely one-sided, and the public schools are like quick to get rid of all those test scores. We don't want to show our test scores. We don't even want to test the homeschoolers, because it makes the public school system look so inept. And so when you hear this from the mainstream, well, there's no regulations, there's no testing environment. It's because when you do have a testing environment, the public schools perform so poorly. And then they use that as an excuse. Well, we're not even regulating these people over here, these fringe crazies. Do you see the double standard? You see why they're using that as a talking point? Listen, I'm all for test scores. Let me just put this out here right now. I'm all for test scores. I think you should do mandatory testing, because all that does is bring more people into the homeschool camp. Because when you show parents, hey, homeschoolers are performing over here and public schools are performing Yeah, down here somewhere. The parents are like, well, maybe I should homeschool. Maybe we should make some sacrifices. Maybe we should just, do without. We'll downsize so we don't have to afford so much. And one of the parents can stay home and we can homeschool our kids because we want to give our kids the best opportunities possible. And the public schools are like, don't do that. Don't do that. Do you see where all this leads? What they want to do and ultimately get to is homeschooling is now illegal in this country. The article continues. Child welfare advocates say the lack of oversight enables educational neglect and physical abuse, since teachers and school officials are often the ones who spot signs of abuse and report it to Child Protective Services. Although no studies show, how many studies? No studies show that homeschooled kids are significantly more likely to be mistreated than those who attend conventional schools. Some research, but there's no studies, but some research suggest that the isolation they experience can lead to particularly severe forms of abuse. Zach, don't you know you homeschooling your kids is isolating them? Yes, I am isolating my kids because I don't want them hanging out with a bunch of kids at the public school systems who are addicted to TikTok, porn, and video games. State Rep Matt Colzar, the Democratic chairman of the Michigan House Education Committee, said in an interview Wednesday that when its session begins next month in January, call your legislators, you people in Michigan. They're likely to see a bill that would look at a bare minimum, require the registration of homeschooled children in Michigan, and perhaps establish additional oversight measures. Colzar said that the avid talks among state officials this week about homeschooling regulation have been fueled by the charges announced by Nestle and by the Post story about the Roman Lopez, a boy from the Flint area who was tortured and starved by a stepmother who claimed to be homeschooling him. Lopez was found dead in a storage bin in his family's basement a few months after his family moved from Michigan to California. So here we have a child who moved with his family from Michigan to California and then was killed, but they're using it in Michigan as a talking point of why homeschoolers need to be regulated. You can't make this stuff up. So a child is moved from Michigan to California and they claim there to be homeschooling him and he dies a horrible, tragic death. And they're going to blame homeschoolers in Michigan when the murder actually took place by his family in California. Colzar said the story about Roman was horrifying and definitely has raised a lot of concerns about the safety of Michigan kids. Didn't take place in Michigan. He also said that his support for regulation isn't meant as an indictment of all or even most homeschooling parents.
Right.
The point being here, guys, is that they are going to use any and every opportunity to come down on homeschooling. And this is solely for the reason because so many people have gotten out of the public school system that the public school system is doing whatever it can to stay financially alive. They rely on those federal tax dollars to live in the debaucherous world that the public schools exist in. And they are going to fight tooth and nail to keep it the status quo. You as parents need to make the choice and decision to say, okay, I'm either going to fight and vote on this topic, or I'm going to move to a state that's way less regulated and the legislators are way more friendly to homeschooling. You have to make that choice for yourself. And some of you, I know that's a hard choice. But the reality is you either stay and fight or you move. You get out. But this wasn't the only article. This one coming from MichiganNewsSource.com. AG comments about child abuse could spark homeschooling law reform. Yes, the mainstream media is in full swing to make changes happen to homeschoolers. And of course, over at the Democratic underground, all the children were homeschooled. Michigan AG lawmakers call for homeschool accountability. Again, the call for accountability is far and wide. I'm not just trying to blow this out of proportion. They're going to use the same tactic that they have used for gun control and they're going to use it for homeschooling. I hope I've made my point and hope I've showed, that's the reality of the situation here. So the object here is not to stick your head in the sand and think that this doesn't matter or it'll all go away or they're not going to do this or they're not going to do that. You must have a voice. You must have a loud voice. Be loud and obnoxious. And call your legislators. Right now in Michigan, I believe the legislature, like most states, is out for the holiday breaks. So you have to call them in January. You must send emails now, call now, leave messages now. But in January, you must blow up their phones. You must blow up their inboxes in order to let them know, hey, listen, this is not going to fly. You know, you as homeschoolers are a significant voting bloc now. You must act like it. Okay, here's the deal. This video is sponsored by perfectpickler.com. This is one of our recipe books that we give for our kits at Perfect Pickler. If you want to be able to grow your own home probiotics in the comfort of your own kitchen, perfectpickler.com is the place to get your kits. Over at patreon.com, we're going to be talking about this week. This is my mullein tincture. And I've been promoting on Patreon. Anyone who joins my Patreon gets these books. They're over 100 years old. This guy lived in the 1800s. They're out of print, out of copyright. And if you buy them over on Amazon, they are, I think it was like $800 and $900, something like that. I'll put the things on the screen. It's hard to get these books, but I'm giving you the PDFs just for joining my Patreon for only $1 a month. So get these books. And in these books, it talks about mullein tincture. And the thing I like about those books, it doesn't tell you how to make it. It tells you why you make it. Very important. There's lots of videos on YouTube where it tells you how to make mullein tincture, but they can't tell you why to make it. Those books tell you why, and we're going to talk about here on Patreon in a video coming up shortly. All right, so I hope you join us over there at patreon.com/AnAmericanHomestead. Link is in the description below. Again, if you join, you get those PDFs downloadable for free. If you can't find the links for some crazy reason, send me a message and I will make sure you get the link for sure. All right, guys. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Are you in Michigan? You better make your voice heard. If not, you still need to make your voice heard. And if you are still in the public school system, dear Lord, get yourself out of that mess. All right, guys. See you next time in the Homestead. Bye. The largest Roman gold stash ever found was in Trier, Germany in 1993. 2,500 Roman coins worth over $1.2 million in melt value today was pulled from an excavation site. The obvious lesson here is that gold holds its value over time. Now, take this stack of old Soviet Union rubles. Do you know how much these are worth? Zilch. It's paper. It holds no value, and like all paper and government fiat currencies, will not last the test of time. Nobody 1,000 years from now is going to unearth these and jump for joy at the wealth that they have just uncovered. Only one historical example of wealth preservation has stood the test of time over and over again: the safeguard of physical gold and silver. If you have spent your entire working life putting money into a 401k or other savings and investment products, they have likely made pulling your money out either very hard or almost impossible. Genesis Gold Group can help you put that money safely into a physical gold and silver product that, like the Roman coins, will maintain their buying power long into the future. Call Genesis Gold Group today, right now, and let them develop a strategy for your savings, 401k, or self-directed IRA. A strategy of physical gold and silver. You can call the number on the screen or visit them at genesisgoldgroup.com. And be sure to say that you heard about them from An American Homestead. Hey guys, did you know you can become a patron of An American Homestead? They get access to private videos, and we send them gifts from the homestead that we make here on the homestead. And we also enter our patrons into special giveaways that are only available to them. And before you go, please check out these other great videos. Go ahead, click. I'll wait.